All right, so welcome everyone to our first Wednesday's community call. Today is December 2nd. We'll be going over the importance of written and verbal agreements and why they are key to stop confusion before it starts. So I'm Christy, life coach and business strategist, and I'm here to help out with tech and anything else that may be needed during the call. A few, housekeeping. Zoom does let me unmute you if you gave it permission. You can raise your hand or type in the chat if you're having any issues. And if you want to share something, go right ahead and share it. You can also, as I mentioned, use a chat to talk to us. You can talk to each other if you'd like. And you could message me privately on there if you're having any tech issues. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Gretchen.
Thanks, Christy. So I'm always thinking of topics that I think will really serve you. And one of the things that came to mind to me this week, because I only came up with what we were going to talk about on Monday, that just shows you can think on your feet as a coach. It doesn't have to be months in advance that you're planning everything. But one of the things that came to mind for me was agreements and expectations and why they're important to go over and to know the difference between. How many times for you have you had an expectation of a client, a spouse, a loved one, or a friend, but you did not have an agreement? Just raise your hand. Anyone have any expectations? You just expect some things, but this person maybe doesn't know, or maybe they do know, but you didn't really agree upon it. So unmute. I'd love to hear what happens with your expectations.
I'd say at least 3/4 of the time they are not met.
Yeah, they're not met. Anyone else? What happens with your expectations?
For me, it can create disappointment when they're not met, even if I realize that I hadn't set those expectations.
Yes, yes. And that's the thing, right? That expectations are premeditated resentments. We're just ready to be mad. We're mad. We had an expectation. The person didn't meet it, but they didn't know. Or they did know, but they never agreed to our expectation. So think about this. In those same situations where maybe you've had an expectation, how would things have gone differently if you would have had an agreement instead of an expectation? Where you actually talked to the person, you both sort of reasoned things out and came up with something together rather than you just expecting that whatever the thing is would be done.
There would be a higher buy-in.
Yes.
And maybe a collaborative force.
Yeah. Yeah. What else?
To be honest with you, I'd be even more disappointed if they did not uphold their end of the agreement.
Usually people do uphold their end of the agreement, though. It's the expectation that they don't. And so this is the trick. And you're right, Michael, me too. If we've actually had an agreement and I'm not just expecting it and you still don't do it, then there's a problem. But here's the thing. When you have an agreement, it does several things. It is a co-creation between you and the other person. And so tonight, obviously, we're going to focus on clients. So it's a co-creation between you and your client. It's also something where there's mutual respect. Nobody has to guess about what's going to happen, because you guys have gone over what the expectations are and what you've agreed to do or not do. And this will help to settle your client into the coaching relationship. It will also help you as a coach to not take the weight of your client's progress on your shoulders. And that's the good news. When I first started coaching, I really believed that it was my job to push the client through whatever it took. I needed to, quote unquote, get them somewhere. They're paying me money. I better get them somewhere. And that's the expectation, but it's not an agreement. And so here's the thing with clients, there's several types of agreements that we have. The first one is your written contract. That's your very first agreement that you're going to have with a client. And that goes over things like, what's the cost? When do they pay? How many sessions? How and when do you meet? What's coaching versus consulting versus therapy? and any other details that might be important, but you lay it all out and you want to make sure that both of you sign it. And that's the first thing so that people can become clear. Many coaches don't even have written agreements. Some that do, they stop there because they think it's enough. Oh, they signed the agreement. I don't need anything else. But here's the deal. When you go a step further and you come up with verbal agreements with your client, it can help them to then co-create with you. How many times have you signed something when there's a lot of fine print and you've just signed it, you didn't really read it? But you agreed to it. I know I'm not real detail oriented. I've signed a lot of things that maybe I didn't read every little thing. My husband's always like, you got to read the things. So his expectations are that I'm going to read all the things, and mine is that he's going to read all the things. So there you go. But what happens with that is when you then verbally, during your very first session, go over what you're going to agree to mutually, it can help with conflict, because conflict can arise in the coaching relationship. You know, sometimes clients may feel like they're not getting whatever it is that they had an expectation of. Sometimes coaches feel like the client isn't getting it at all. And so to bypass that, there's a few things that are important and that I would encourage you to go over with your client. So I do some spoken agreements, and here's some of the things that I include in my spoken agreements that I think might be helpful for you. So you can take notes, you can rewatch the recording, whatever makes the most sense. But when I start with the client, the first thing I do is I do talk about agreements versus expectations. And we take a look at what the difference is in an agreement versus an expectation, and how it can set them up for success. So when you think about clients, or you think about people in your life, when someone has an expectation of another person, there's a natural tendency to want to rebel, right? If you expect me to do something, but I didn't say that I would, and I know I have some rebellers on this call. I see you smiling, who you are. I know I have some rebellers on this call that we're not going to do it just because you expect me to. I didn't say I was going to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm my own person. Who are you to tell me what I should do or not do? I had that happen to me tonight. My aunt had an expectation about something, not an agreement, and I told her I didn't care. I am not going to agree to that. I'm going to do the thing that I want to do. And it's just that knee-jerk reaction of being told what to do. So right away, you want to discover with your client where the rebel buttons are. If you have expectations, a lot of times that's the rebel button. The other thing to take a look at is agreements can be really creative and courageous. You know, when you're co-creating with somebody else and you two are coming at it together and really deciding what is going to serve that other person best and what's going to work for you, it can take some courage because it's vulnerable. You have to say the things that, you know, work for you and don't work for you, and be brave enough and create a space that your client's brave enough to say what they need and want as well. So I'm going to pause there for a minute. Tell me a little bit about what's already sparking for you from this conversation.
I'll share.
Yeah.
I think this sets us up to maybe have a space to discuss what we don't do, if that hasn't been mentioned
Yes.
either in the beginning or in the agreement.
That's right. That's right. What else is coming up?
I'll share.
Yeah.
So I tend to like additional verbal agreements to reinforce the written contract, because I know some people aren't detailed oriented. So I want to be sure that I'm communicating boundaries and how certain things work so I can best serve them.
Yeah.
There's one of my clients right now. She was a friend for a while, like a business buddy, and she wanted coaching. I'm like, okay, but when you're asking Coach Christy, do it on Voxer. If you're asking Biz Buddy, do it on Facebook. It'll help me keep my head together for that. And she's been very great at that. I told her straight up front about it.
Yeah, that's right. And so here's the thing, agreements, I'll tell you, the verbal agreements, they've been revolutionary for my clients and for my practice. My clients show up on time, they pay on time, they come ready. They don't agree to actions that they're not going to take because we've agreed to it beforehand. And if we hadn't, there might be a lot of like, oh, sorry that I'm 5 minutes late. Oh yeah, I'll pay you next week when I get paid. And so here's the thing. I know that I talk about this a lot, but we can't be afraid of our clients. As the coach, we have to set the container and the frame for our clients to know how to behave. And again, we can co-create it together. So here's some of the things that I like to find out. You know, one thing, even before somebody becomes my client, during an enrollment call is I like to find out for the investment of their time and their resources, what are they expecting? What is their win? How will they measure that coaching has been successful for them? And that's important. You know, when I first started coaching, I didn't know to ask that. And I didn't know it was important. I just assumed that for most people, the win would be something around they want, you know, more financially or whatever it is that I think that they're coming to me for. And oftentimes, what would happen to me is then I would be judging their actions or non-actions and what they were thinking was a win against something that I really thought they should be doing. So I had an agenda, you know, and so we can get sloppy as coaches if we don't know concretely what a win is going to be for our client or even our potential client. So I like to find out when I'm going to work with people, if we're going to work together for 6 months or a year, what do you need to have happen for this to really make a difference in your life? What's the most important thing for you? And then you get this beautiful list and you co-create it together. Again, this also takes you off the hook as a coach that maybe you don't think that your client's progressing very fast, or maybe you think they should be doing something more. You know, maybe you think that their goal should be bigger, their fee should be higher, what their love life should be more in place, because you can do it. But remember, it's not what we can do that we're going to expect our clients to do. It's what they tell us they want that we want to help them get. And that was a really big relief for me. I coach a lot of people. And if I were still in the place of judgment that their win only mattered if it was financial or it was big, then I wouldn't feel like many people progressed, right? And it's the small wins, the small stepping stones that really become the great big wins, because we have to help our clients develop muscles. When you can get a small win and you meet your client exactly where they're at, instead of making them stretch too big, and then they get firm on their feet, that's where the wins begin. And that's what we're really looking for. Is this making sense? Okay, so that very first, enrollment call, if it's going well, slow down, find out what would a win be for you during our coaching time together. If you were to make this investment, what is the most important thing that you would want to get out of it? And then another thing that you can ask is, who would you need to be to get those things? And that's where the co-creation really starts, right? That we can want all sorts of things. And I'm never here to tell my client if they can or if they can't. I don't know what they can do. Anyone can really do anything. I get surprised all the time. So I never put a judgment on if they can do it. I expect that they can, and that's why they're coming to coaching. I'm going to help them with that. But when you ask them, who would you need to be in order to have those things? You're asking the client to stretch themselves. They're already going to tell you, well, I'd need to be bolder. I'd have to stop procrastinating. This story that I have that if I take money from people, I'm a car salesman. No offense if anyone's ever been a car salesman, but you know what I mean with the analogy. That would have to stop. I feel bad because I'm in a helping profession. How can I charge people? Those sorts of things. I'd have to stop thinking that. So you're going to hear their story, and that already starts creating agreements that, well, remember, you told me you wanted to do this work. These were the top 7 things you want in our 6 months, but you said this other person was who you would have to be. And so what we're asking our clients to do is to suspend reality for a minute. If you didn't have this money story, what are the steps that you would take to get this goal that you told me you wanted to achieve? So it's already the beginning of an agreement, you know, and it's already calling the client to step out of their old behaviors and beliefs to do the different thing, because they've told you that this is what they want and this is what's going to make their investment worth it. And remember, as coaches, we don't buy into the small thinking story of those old stories. We're here to support and we're here to create big vision for our client and to help them to ease into it. So that can be something that you can think about when it comes to agreements as well. I'll pause there for a second before we get to what the spoken agreements are. Any comments on that or questions? Nothing?
I do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's so powerful to set everything up in the beginning, like you said, because then you don't have to go back and band-aid stuff or deal with that uncomfortable confrontation, maybe that you guys are not on the same page, of the coach and the client. And I think as a coach, you get to do the work peacefully, knowing that everything has been laid out and the client is under understanding, and you can pull these conversations back when it's not been honored or something goes off track.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
cool.
That's exactly right. You know, I was having a conversation with my coach today, and she said that she was having an add-on session with one of her clients. And I said, "What do you mean add-on?" And she said, "Well, I didn't get it right in our session last week. I pushed him too hard and he feels really uncomfortable about a price. And it's a big proposal that he's going to put out to this company. And I want him to get it. So I really want to serve him. So I'm going to have an add-on session and I'm going to make sure that he feels relaxed and comfortable with the price that he's going to charge, rather than stretching him so much where he's going to fall in the hole and not be able to close the deal." You know, what a good coach. What a good coach to meet the client exactly where they're at. You know, she knows how to go out and make whatever the big figure was that she was going to do, but it scares him. So he's not ready for that. And so it's interesting that as coaches, one of the reasons I created this community is so that we can talk about this, because we don't know when we're misstepping. Sometimes we think that our stretching a person and pushing a person and showing them what they can do, look at this mirror, you can do this and you can be like that, is helpful. But what it's really doing is paralyzing them. It's not making them want to take actions, making them go inward. And that's the exact opposite of what coaching is supposed to be. So meet your client where they're at, but ask them first, what do you want and who would you have to be to get there? All right. Spoken agreements. So after they have signed the contract, you know who they have to be, you know what it is that they want. You want to spend some time really talking through the things that together you're going to co-create. So here's some of mine. You can use them. It's completely fine. And you can add your own. So one of the first things that I like to go over with clients is that there's no stopping and no pauses when we coach together. And I tell them, and here's why. Coaching brings up big feelings. Coaching is going to confront your behaviors. Coaching is going to expose you, right? I mean, you can't get away with it with your coach for very long if you're a procrastinator or you don't follow through or whatever it is. Like it's right there. And it can feel so uncomfortable to be seen. And so I tell my clients, and we're going to coach through it. You know, so can we have the agreement that even when things are uncomfortable, or even when you feel like, oh, I don't really have anything this week, that you're going to come to the session ready and prepared anyway. My clients agree to that because it's important work, but they have to be willing to invest in themselves to get that original thing that they told me they wanted so that they can be that person they said they needed to be. And part of that has to do with there's really just no pausing in coaching. The next one, and a lot of coaches shy away from this, they're so afraid to talk about money, but my very next agreement is about payments, how I get paid, when I get paid, and that we don't need to talk about money again. So I don't end up being a bill collector. It's like, I expect that I will have these payments on this date, and here's how we're going to do that. Can we both agree to this? And sometimes if the client's like, well, you know what, I really can't pay by this date and my money is not, I don't always know. It's kind of like one of those things. I'm not sure when I'm going to have it. I don't know what's going to come in every 2 weeks. I don't work a corporate job. And we talk about that because that could be a deal breaker for you as the coach. So clients don't decide when they're going to pay. You're the coach. You're the business owner. Make firm agreements about payments with your clients. Now, I've given a lot of payment plans to people. I don't want money to be the reason that someone can't work with me. And so one of the objections that I'm sure you have all had at this point is about fees. And so another good question when this objection comes up, oh, it's a lot of money, I don't know if I can pay it, is to ask, is it only about the money? Because if it's only about the money, you can always work it out. Every time. You can always work it out. You can create a new program for them that's different at a different fee. You can come up with a different payment structure if it really is only about the money. So have firm agreements about how you get paid and when you collect. It will make it so much easier on you that you're not like, hey, Gretchen, it's the 15th. Just wondering, here's my Venmo handle again in case you lost it. And then we get passive as coaches and it becomes weird. You don't want that. You want to lead the entire time. It also will make your client feel safe in the relationship, and it will cause them to show up like, she's not going to let me off the hook with the payment. This isn't a pay as you go and only if I like it. So you want your clients to realize this is important work. Something else that I do as an agreement is I like to talk to my clients about how much strategy we're going to do, how much deep diving we're going to do, and how much I call it coach salting I'm going to do. I work with a lot of coaches, and so many of them hire me because they want the consulting. They want to know what I know. But I do like to have the agreement that we're not going to hide behind me consulting and that we're still going to do a deep dive into who they are and where they're getting stuck. Because it's the where we're getting stuck that I could pour everything I have in my head into somebody else's head. But if we're not working on where the person's getting stuck, they're not really going to move forward. But can you feel the safety with all of these? It's like, hey, we're not going to start and stop. This is really an important commitment financially and with your time. And by the way, we're going to coach. We're going to coach on the real thing because you told me this list of things that you wanted and who you needed to be to get there. So let's coach on that. But you're getting their buy-in all the way through. The next one I have is about time. Be on time, and that if you're not going to be on time, you need to let me know. And then I let them know how long I'll wait for them during a session. We also have the agreement that if they're not on time and it's repeated, then we're going to coach on that. That if this is something that's consistent and that it happens, as your coach, can we agree that when I see patterns that I'm able to bring them up to you because I want to be able to be transparent and really serve you. So again, it's creating more safety. And then my next one, and this one can feel really scary to say to a client, is I'm here to serve you and not to please you. Can we agree that I'm here to hold you to your highest level of success and what you can do? I'm not here to please you and just to make you feel good and say, oh, that's okay. Better luck next time. Oh, I know you had a hard day. And not to say that I'm not going to be a human. People have stuff that come up, but we're not here to please our clients. We're here to serve them. So let's stop on that one for a minute. Tell me what comes up for you when you hear that you're here to serve and not to please.
I love it. I think it's so essential. I definitely tell them that in the beginning. It's going to be hard work. We're going to have difficult conversation. And sometimes you might not really like me. But if you can see the bigger picture of why I'm here, I'm going to make sure that I'm serving you the right way. And, you'll be able to tell me if this is too much or not as well. And we can discuss that along the way. So you don't have to hold back and pretend that something is right when it's not.
That's right. That's right. What else comes up? Go ahead, Michael.
In my experience so far, in all the clients that I've worked with or the consulting calls that I've had so far, I tell them toward the end when we start talking about nuts and bolts that I'm a straight shooter and that I will call things as I see them and I'm not I'm not afraid in that level. And they've all been like, yeah, that's what I need. They like that. So when I actually tell them that's how it is, so far at least, I've gotten really good responses from them.
Good. Honor.
I feel like when we position it that way, it really distinguishes us from just a friend who's there to encourage them and do all that great stuff. And that's wonderful. But if they really want to make progress, they need someone who's going to shoot it straight to them. And I don't actually use those words. I think I'll steal them because I think they're beautiful, but I say the same concept. And I say, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to challenge you. And they're like, oh, good, that's what I need. So I think that creates a safe environment too, where they feel like they can confront their own realities, and it'll be safe to do that.
That's exactly right. And you hit on such a good point with that, that we're not here to be friends. You're going to love your clients though. If you don't love them, don't work with them. You know, just there's so many other people. If you can get a client that you don't love, you definitely can get one that you do love. It's much harder to get one that you don't love and have them pay you money than to get one that you do love to pay you money. So get the ones that you love, work with those people. And what's interesting with that is, you will notice that you're going to build rapport, but it's not friendship. It's different. And you're going to care deeply about your client, but you won't get stuck in their story with them, because if you do, you're no longer serving them. You're just not serving them. So we're always looking for our clients at the highest level and challenging them. And as the relationship goes forward, the great news is you know things about them that you didn't know on day one, and they trust you. And so you can say things that are even more bold to really help them. You know, so I love those kinds of conversations. Something else that I like my clients to agree to is that I am not responsible for your success. Just because you paid whatever you paid, I don't know if you're going to do it. I have no idea of knowing. I know what you told me you wanted, and I know who you told me you needed to be. And I am happy to coach you in that in between and help you to get there. But I can't make your phone call. I can't follow through for you. That's not what the coach is going to do. And so this is important, because a lot of times people are confused on the difference between coaching and consulting. And a consultant will do it for you. That's their job. They pay you so that they don't have to. We're not consultants, we're coaches. And coaches, we are going to help people go deeper and help them reveal what they need to do. So it's really good to spell out that, hey, I'm here and I'm going to coach you fully, and I'm going to be present, and we're going to be active together, but you're 100% responsible for your results. And clients get a little bit scared of that. They're like, well, what do you mean? I just paid you all this money. Why am I responsible for my results? Because I don't live in your house and I can't do all those things for you. You're going to have to do it. And then the next one that goes with that is all about the actions that they're going to take. I co-create with my clients about what steps they're going to do, but it's not up to me to make sure that they're done. And if clients aren't moving forward on their actions, I'm not here to be the police. You know, I'm not here to be the police. And so people in coaching, they need to be self-motivated. So remember that is when you're enrolling clients, if you have someone who says things like, oh, I just need someone to make sure that I'm going to do it, that's already a red flag. They need to make sure they're going to do it themselves. And so a question to ask them is, how do you believe a coach is going to help you make sure that you're going to do it? And then you're going to hear what they think. Oh, I think they're going to text me. I'm sure that you'd really get on my back if I didn't do it. And you can let them know that, no, that's actually not what the coaching relationship is. Here's what it is. It's a deep co-creation where we find your motivation to do those things so that you can have the follow through. Because I find that this is one of those agreements where the expectations there from the client. They expect that because they paid, you as the coach are somehow going to transform their life. So this one, when it's a verbal commitment, it takes the pressure off of you. And it doesn't mean that you sit back and you're really texting during your coaching session. You need to be paying attention and be fully present. But it does mean that you're not responsible. What you are responsible for is bringing a great coaching session to the table. That's what you're responsible for. Any questions there?
I have one.
Yeah.
A lot of what I've dealt with clients is accountability. And when I say that, it's not the sole purpose, but it's something that they've always come to me for, is that in this process, they need somebody to be accountable to. And I know that you said before that we are not their accountability partners. However, that does seem to be a very common component of why people have not succeeded in achieving their goals.
Yes. And so I'll answer that. And if I'm not hitting it on the head, let me know. But so with clients, I do always ask them what they want to commit to, and I keep track of it. And then we check in and we see, hey, how did that go? You know, how did it go with whatever they told me they're going to do? So you can ask, or you can have a prep form where they already let you know. But what I'm not is a crutch. I'm not a crutch, and I'm not like the taskmaster with the whip getting ready to, let hell rain down on them if they haven't gotten it done. And some people, when they come to coaching, they think finally someone's going to hold me accountable, but it really starts with the client being accountable to themselves. However, there is a piece there that there's an embarrassment level of, I told my coach I'm going to do it. Here it is a week later and I didn't do it. Oh, it's another week and I didn't do it. How many times can the dog eat my homework? So there is a piece with coaching, just knowing that you're going to tell someone that you haven't done it again, that can help people to move forward. And that's okay. I get that part of it, but we're not here to be the one to make sure that they do it. And it's usually a deeper issue. If your client is committing to things and telling you they're going to do it and they're not, few things could be happening. One, they might be people pleasing you because they think you want them to do it. Like, oh, my coach is really going to be proud of me if I do this. And that's transference. They're putting you in their parent position or whoever it is in their life that used to give them the good job or the gold star. And we don't want to do that as the coach, or it's not quite the right motivation for them. We haven't tapped into what would really motivate them to help them get there. And, or sometimes it's too big and they want that thing, but they have to take a lot of steps between here and there. And so you need to back it down and make it smaller. Is that helpful, Michael?
Yeah, very. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have questions or comments there? Okay. The other thing I like to have verbally with my clients is that I want them to be prepared for their coaching session. I don't want them to come to the session and say, I don't know what I should talk about. Well, I don't know what you should talk about either. And that's not my responsibility. You're paying money for this. Come prepared. And so during those verbal agreements, talk about the importance of being reflective. A lot of times when we say we don't know, it's because we're too scared to go inward. And it's a lot of work to go inward and to check in with ourselves about what we need. And so you can talk to your client about not having any hidden fear or hidden part of them that they don't want to tell you about, because that's the one thing that if you knew, it would really ruin the coaching relationship, because it's never true. It's never true. And so I talk about reflect beforehand. And if there's any hidden fear or piece of you that you're wanting to show up and look good for me, let's talk about that. I don't want that to get in the way of what the story is that you're telling yourself and the thing that's really keeping you from knowing what you want to work on in coaching. Because almost every time it's something about self-esteem. There's a judgment that they have, an old story or way of being that they're living in. But when you ask them to reflect and to be prepared beforehand, and you prepare them of, I'm going to ask you, what do you want to work on today? What do you want to leave the session with? The more of those things that you have ready to go, the more that we can accomplish. Clients usually can wrap their head around it. But when coaches don't prep their clients, people still don't quite understand what coaching is. They think like, oh, I'll just talk about some things, or my coach is going to tell me what I need to do. And that's not the case. So we do want to prep our client. And then I ask my clients at the end of our session to take some time to review their notes, have at least 15 minutes, half an hour is better, where you can take a look at what we've gone over, because maybe there's an action that you want to take right now. So having reflection time is really important. Okay. Any questions with that? All right. I also like to have the agreement about what's expected in between sessions, and how I work, so that clients aren't just constantly blowing you up with things. I'm very available to my clients. I like them to text me and leave voice texts and emails and everything else. I want to be a part of their day-to-day thinking and to help them to move forward. But some coaches don't, and so you need to really have an agreement about communication and what's included and what isn't included. Because that's one of those other things where clients can have an expectation. Oh, I paid you. You need to be taking my text on a Sunday. Why didn't she get back to me? So be really specific and clear. The other thing that I think is really important is coachability. Can we have the agreement that you're going to be coachable? That you're willing to take a look at your way of being and move into the person you told me that you needed to be to get these next things. Because when clients aren't coachable, nothing's going to happen except a lot of resentment from the coach and a lot of resentment from the client and feeling like it's wasted time. So talk about coachability. Talk about, the part about coming in with a blank slate and being ready to create possibility. Talk about that with your client because it will help them to be mentally prepared as well. Any comments there?
For that one, I want to add that it helps stop or too much of it rather, of the I don't knows, and not get stuck in a session of just I don't know. That's only their response. And I've had a conversation with someone before, like, well, when I see a pattern of that, I'm going to call you out on it, and we're going to coach through until you feel like you know something, because it's there. But I don't know is not something that I would let you slide on for an entire session.
Yep, that's right. That's right. The next one is all about power. And I like to call it turning up the heat. Sometimes we're going to have some low intensity sessions. It's a lot of doing, a lot of checking things off the list, and that's fine. We have to have the goal line and the soul line. And sometimes it's higher heat, the flames higher. And I do ask my clients to be ready for that high flame coaching. Because when you hire me, that's what you're going to get. I don't know how to dial that back very well. That's not my job. My job is to serve and not to please and to bring the flame. And so I challenge my clients, but I also offer them a space where they can 100% step into their own power. And how awesome is that? Like, there's not a lot of places in life where you're allowed to step fully into your own power. For most people, at some point, we've been told that we're too much. You're too much. That's too big, too much personality, too much this, too much. And so in coaching, it's never too much. Bring it. Bring who you really are and let's play. Let's do that. Yeah. Authenticity is really important. I want my clients to come and to tell on themselves. Tell on themselves that I didn't do it and I thought about doing it. I'm not going to do it. Or, yeah, I'm really struggling with whatever the thing they're struggling with. My ego's really getting in the way. Because if we're not authentic and honest in the coaching relationship, not a lot of change can occur. Not real change that means anything. You can still check things off the list and you can help people be accountable, but that soul line, the part that they told you the new person that they want to be to get the things that they want to have to make your fee worth it, all have to do with the authenticity. And so that's really important. Get that agreement with your client. And then commitment is also really important, that you want them to be committed to the process, that you're committed to their process, but you can't be more committed than they are. They have to commit to this. And typically when someone gives 100% to something, they get a result. They get close to that finish line or over the finish line, or, they're right there, or we can change course on what the finish line is. But hardly have I seen a person fail who has given 100% to coaching. It's the ones that hold back, that are telling you half truths, that show up unprepared, that are always 5 minutes late, that want to move their coaching sessions, that ask you, can we pause it for 2 months? They're not going to do well in coaching. And then you as the coach struggle with, but they paid me money. And the client feels like, well, I paid the money, but what they're really telling you is that it hasn't been worth it yet. That's why they're doing these things. So as a coach, serve your client, make sure that they're committed and that they agree to that with you. Questions or comments there? All right. Another one's all about confidentiality. It's really important to keep your clients anonymous. A lot of my clients know each other, but I don't tell people who I coach. Even when I know two people are friends, it's not for me as the coach to say like, hey, so-and-so, I'm also coaching so-and-so. That's not appropriate. And it's definitely not appropriate to discuss things about other clients with a client. Keep it confidential. If you want to drop a quote that a client has said about you, get permission first. Clients feel vulnerable. They tell us things that are important. And when you make it into a story or a point of learning for somebody, it has to be very, very anonymous, or else you can make your client feel unsafe. So you really want your clients to feel safe. Something that I do too is I ask my clients to keep my confidentiality. Sometimes I might have a story or something that is personal that can help my client. I don't go around like just sharing my whole biography with people, my whole autobiography, but sometimes there's something that's like, yeah, this is a connection point and it makes sense to share. But when I'm doing that within a session, I don't want them to go back out and tell 20 people about what I've shared. So I ask for mutual confidentiality. And you might want to do that with your clients because it creates a really nice sacred space. And then the last one that I ask is, what are your triggers? What are the things for you that if I communicate in this way, it's going to set you off? For me, it's passive aggressive. Passive aggressive sets me off every time. I don't understand it. I don't know what's happening. I don't understand when people say something's fine, but it's really not fine. That blows my mind every time. So I don't get that. So if I have a client that exhibits passive aggressive, you can bet that it's going to be a mismatch because I don't get it. I don't get it. I think we're fine, but we're really not fine. So your clients need to tell you, well, sometimes I need a little bit of a warm up. I don't want to dive right into coaching. I need 5 minutes of like, how are you? How was your week? Okay. Before they can relax into themselves. Sometimes clients are going to tell you, I want you to be really hard on me. And it's like, no, that's not quite what coaching is. But have some agreements about the triggers and about what coaching is and what it isn't. Those are my agreements that I go over with my clients. And I can't stress to you how important that is and what it will do in your coaching business. So I'm going to open it up for questions and comments from you. What are you getting from this so far?
I'll go.
Yeah.
As you saw me, probably I was taking all the notes that I could.
Love it.
Yeah, this is brilliant. I actually hadn't really written it down like you had explained it and have it, be kind of a routine that I check off each time. And there were some things that I do talk about. There are some things that I hadn't talked about. I didn't think about the mutual confidentiality. So that was like a big ringer for me. And coachability, I think that's so important because I think a lot of people who haven't been coached don't really quite understand. So getting them there sometimes takes time as well for both parties.
Yeah.
But I love this. Like, I love that you came up with the list and you shared this. Like, I think this is something that I'm going to reflect and take home
Yeah.
and create something that works for me. So thank you for this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad it's useful. What else are you getting from this? Yeah, Adam.
I had a question that came up when you're talking about the passive aggressive and the no, everything's fine when it's not. So some people project when things aren't going the way that they're hoping they'd go. It's the coach's fault. It's not the client's fault.
Yep.
Is there a way that's come up for you that you've been able to turn that around in a way that the client might be more receptive to?
Great question. So typically what I will find out, we'll go back to the agreements. It'll be like, so-and-so, I'm sensing that this is coming up. We've already agreed that we're going to have direct communication. We've already agreed on these things. So I'm allowed to bring it up and to pose the question of what's not working for you? What's getting in the way of this being a win? And just ask. Now, sometimes clients are not comfortable saying it because it feels very outside their zone of maybe how they were brought up or what confrontation might mean or the way that they view confrontation. And I always go back to the agreements of remember, we're here so that I can serve you. And so for me to be able to do that, I need your authenticity. And that usually can create a space for a client to be able to say the thing that they need to say. Did I answer your question, Adam?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. What else?
If I were to say something that might be a little abrasive, but I feel like it needs to be said, and then, I mean, what if they don't react well to that? And I could visibly see it. Maybe they don't say it, but I kind of visibly see it. Like, I haven't run into that yet. So like, what would you do in that situation where I was a little too forward?
I haven't. So here's the thing. a good way if you're going to be forward is to get permission. If you know you're going to give a zinger, you can say, I'm noticing something. Can I share it? And then say it. And then ask them at the end of that, what do you think? What comes up for you when I share that? And let them tell you, because it's softer sometimes. And some people might need that. With most of my clients, they're okay with me just saying it and asking the question. It's kind of the thing that they hire me for. And Michael, for you, that's going to be the thing they hire you for too. It's going to be your directness and your laser that you can see.
Okay,
But if it
thanks.
does come up, I have had a client before that I could tell I said something and it stung. And I said, oh, did that one sting? And she was like, yeah, that one stung. And I said, okay, let's look at the sting. Let's look at the sting. Because my clients know that everything I say is all meant in love. You know, let's look at the sting. I had a client who she had shared something about something she wanted to write, but she was like, I don't know if it's any good. And I said, well, if you don't write it, I'm going to write it. And I'm completely joking. And it really set her off. She was very upset. And she said, I don't feel safe. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I was joking. It's such a good idea. I would never take your idea. And it took another session for us to recover from that. So sometimes even just when we're being our personality, you know, we can say things that the other person's like, backs up from. So just never ignore it. Take care of it in the moment.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. What else is coming up? Anna, how about you? Do you want to share?
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm a little bit different than most of the attendees here. My name is Anna Stavaridis, and I have Meraki Fitness. I do concierge personal training and corporate wellness. In addition to that, I do some entrepreneurial consulting.
Nice.
I have a background of about 20 years with wealth management. So I have a little bit of a different perspective when it comes to developing yourself and executive leadership and that sort of thing, and have gone through extensive training myself. So now kind of on the other side and helping others learn little tidbits of my travels.
Yeah.
So I don't have any coaching designations or that sort of thing like some of the others, like Miss Aska with her PCC. Congratulations. But I think it's great to have the expectations. I have several trainers that are my contractors, so I have to have expectations with them, as well as the clients that I send them out to, and marry all of that together. So it's very important to be clear from the beginning with all of that, and also to know our value, to not go out and just, oh, well, they were, 15 minutes late, or, oh, they didn't call me, before, they called me an hour before and canceled. And that's not okay. We have them sign paperwork ahead of time. No call, no show is still billed.
Yep.
Setting the precedent that we have we can book the time otherwise. So that professional courtesy, the confidentiality, we hear things, especially down on the floor. I always joke that once we get you down on the floor and you start crying, now we can start working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's when we finally can have the breakthrough and really know the why behind how they got to where they are and how we can move forward together. So we have a lot of parallels in this, and I find it really interesting to just hear the coaching aspect in regard to my consulting services that I have.
Yeah. Well,
so
good. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for your feedback about those agreements. Anyone else want to share? Mark, what about you?
You couldn't resist. You had to pick on me. Didn't you?
I did.
Not a lot of questions, but actually really a lot of notes. Obviously, I'm a personal trainer myself, so I learned the hard way when it came to setting expectations and setting boundaries and verbal agreements. So over the course of years, I've learned to with every client now, I'm setting boundaries, and we create that agreement. So really, this has just allowed me a shortcut to transfer that, if you like. There are some similarities there when it comes to coaching, but there's some other areas, you know, that you touched on as far as coachability and a lot of other things that will help me not make the same mistakes, so that I can hit that up front rather than learn from mistakes and then deal with it at a later point. So a lot of really good points in there. I really like the questions that you talked about at the start, that take the emphasis off you in terms of responsibility. So, you know, what are their expectations? What's their win? How will they know that coaching has been a success for them? I do that to some extent in the training environment as well. You know, what is the win? So really good questions. I probably should have had a few of them in mind this morning when I had an enrollment call. So there's one for later reference. I really like the discover the rebel button. That's a really good one. I've never heard that said before. So that was really good for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of stuff that's transferable that will save me time and resentment, definitely.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that.
Thank
Okay. You're welcome. Anyone else want to share what you got tonight? Okay. So here's what I'm wondering. With what you learned, what do you want to commit to doing between now and when I see you again in January? With these agreements and expectations, what's the one thing that you're going to take action on? Yeah, Aska.
I'll go. I'm going to be onboarding a new client. So I'm going to put my own list of verbal agreements together and try it out and see how it goes.
Good. Let me know how it goes.
Will do.
Put it in the group. I'll be excited to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What else? Okay. Heba says redesign my agreement. What else?
Update my agreement to include the mutual part, because I did not think of that.
Good. What else? What else do you want to commit to?
I guess I would say the same thing that was already said. I do a written agreement, but I don't like reiterate everything very well when we actually get started.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that you're going to do that. So does anyone have any questions about anything that's going on in your coaching practice that you would like answered before we say goodbye tonight? Going once?
Would these agreements be okay to put in the contract that the client signs?
You can put them in the contract, but it's pretty long. There's a lot there, and a lot of times people don't understand what they mean until you talk it through.
Oh yeah, I wasn't saying as a replacement for the verbal discussion around it. I was just wondering if the actual contract would be a good place for these, or if it should go in a separate email or document.
Yeah, you can. Typically, though, your written agreement's something else. You know, it's really the time, the money, all of those sorts of things, when you're going to meet, what's expected. But the verbal agreements are the ones that I went over. If there's something in there, though, that you'd like to have in writing, go for it. Yeah. All right, everybody. Go ahead, Aska. Yeah.
Yeah. What happened in your experience when you didn't have these verbal agreements put together?
All sorts of things. It's a wild ride as a coach, right? Most of the time it was okay, but it was mainly the expectations that I know my clients had of me, and expectations that I had of myself of what my clients should do. And so by having the written agreement, by having the verbal agreement, it's helped to release me from some of but they're not making this much money and they're not doing this thing, and they're not, because it's not ever what they said they wanted. And in the beginning, I always knew what we were going to work on because we'd go over that, but I had never asked the question in the way with the frame of what would make your investment for coaching worth it, and who would you have to be to have that? I didn't know to ask that.
Yeah, that's
You
so
know, so
powerful.
yeah, those are things that I wish I knew earlier.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a very, very happy holiday season, and I'll see you again in the new year. Be well, and if you need anything, reach out.
Thank you so much,
You're
Thanks, Gretchen.
welcome. Have a
Thank you,
good
Gretchen.
one.
everyone. Good night.
Take care.